This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
It's January 16th, Monday. Thanks for joining us. Martin Luther King Day, our American neighbors, of course, and people around the world observing that.
Also Blue Monday.
Blue Monday.
Yeah, the saddest day of the year, apparently.
You just blazed right through the Martin Luther King Day mention to get to Blue Monday?
My bad.
Did you want to maybe take a, yeah, let's take a quick second to recognize Martin Luther, the good doctor. And yeah, of course, people around the world are going to be taking a look at that. Like I said, I saw a tweet this morning where somebody said Martin Luther King did not deliver the I have a plan speech.
Yeah.
He delivered the I have a dream speech.
Yeah.
Talking about how change makers are driven by dreams and faith and visions on what a world can look like. And I thought that was pretty powerful stuff. And it is Blue Monday, too, which is good news that we've got registered psychologist Ashley Wanamaker, who's going to join us in about a half hour's time. Looking forward to that conversation. She describes herself as an accidental TikTok therapist. And so we'll have to see what that means. I think she maybe sort of like, maybe sort of accidentally became somebody that has like 50,000 followers, and some of her videos get like hundreds of thousands of views. But she's very matter of fact in her takes on, things like what gaslighting are. That's a video that I just watched, and she wants to talk to us about. We figured 2 weeks in to 2023, this was a good time to evaluate how people are doing with New Year's resolutions. And she's an expert in setting. We're both laughing. And she's an expert in how to set meaningful goals. And so she promises that she's going to give us some great tools and tricks. Plus, of course, Charles Adler coming up in about 5 minutes. So I have a confession to make. Why did you chuckle, though, when we talked about New Year's resolutions?
Well, just because, I didn't stop mine, but I made a change.
Okay.
So the going to the gym early in the morning at 6 a.m. was not working out.
No.
Number one, I was coming in here like 25, 30 minutes late.
Yeah,
Number
not great.
two, it's just, I just can't do it, you know? So I like to work out in the afternoon or evenings. I used to like to work out in the morning. So went over to the local, don't scold me, Walmart.
Yeah.
And picked up all the fitness stuff that is now on sale because everyone bought it the first week.
Oh, you mean like weights and elastics and all that
So
kind
I
of
bought
stuff?
some adjustable free weights. I bought a bench. I bought some matting for the floor. Bought a pull-up station, and also for my wife too. She doesn't want to get up and go to the gym, and there's not a gym right near we are in Niagara Ridge that isn't packed from everyone going. So now we've got a little home gym in our spare room at home. So
good for you.
Made a slight change, but still on track.
Yeah.
How about you?
Well, I've been doing my purge and been doing the minimalism game. And a couple people, I was in Jasper over the weekend. I had a wonderful weekend out in Jasper. Going to tell you all about it on Wednesday in my Jasper memories. I'll show some videos and some photos and stuff. A couple people in Jasper were quite right in pointing out that they said we haven't seen like a post lately. I was posting on Instagram and Twitter on my personal accounts at Ryan Jesperson, things I was purging. One item on the first of the month, 2 items on the second, and so on. They said we haven't seen any for a few days. Now, the fact of the matter is I'm working on a master purge, but it is time that I do reveal some of the things that I'm getting rid of. The whole point of this is accountability. And so today I will vow that I will catch up on that. So you can do it where you'll say, people have reasonable things like you're gone for the weekend, you're not at home, you're not going to be posting every day.
You don't have to be perfect.
But on the 13th, the 14th, and the 15th of the month, what is that, like 27, 32, 42 items I owe? So even just over the weekend, I owe 42 items.
Just make it an even 50 today.
I think I've got to catch up on like 100.
This box of 50 screws. What about the shirt that you wore on Friday? You said you were going to get rid of that.
Yeah, I did.
Did that happen?
I did. Well, it's in my. So I've got a collection. Like I've got a big box going that goes to the Goodwill. So the Goodwill drop off the donation center is right by where I play hockey every week. So I figure once a week through this month I'll drop off a box or a big bag, and it did go in. Yeah, the shirt that I wore on Friday's show
shirt.
It's a great shirt.
People go back and look at Friday's show.
Yeah,
it's a flower shirt. I loved it.
Yeah, it is a great shirt, and it was always a shirt that I got got compliments on when I wore it, so then that made me probably wear it longer than I should have, but it just wasn't fitting right anymore. It just wasn't feeling good anymore. So I had to get one last wear in, and so that was on Friday's show. That was a great roundtable on Friday. The Edifier Award winners. Yeah. 3 people that were honored and recognized in Edify magazine. You can check it out at edifyedmonton.com. And I mean, you don't have to be from Edmonton to appreciate advice and insights from people that are, quite frankly, big achievers in their field. And so we talked to 3 individuals that are really doing remarkable things, but asked them questions that I think, people are interested in. What's the biggest hurdle you ever overcame? What's the best piece of advice you ever got? And I love those types of conversations. It was a nice way to wrap up the week when there's a lot of heavy news. You know what I mean?
We got comments coming in that people love the shirt.
Oh, gee. Well, now I'm going to see. No, but this is the problem, because now I'm going to go. I better not read the live chat, because I'm going to be convinced to pull the shirt back out of the donation bin. See, this is what I do. This is how people end up hanging on to a ton of things that they don't need.
Maybe I will want to wear it again.
Well, exactly. You know what's going to happen is I'm going to donate it, and then like 2 months from now, someone's going to say, we'd like you to attend this party that we're throwing. The only thing is you've got to wear like a really colorful floral print shirt. And I'm going to go, oh, geez.
You're going to see some
exact one that I had.
Some strapping young lad wearing it out at the bar. You're like, hey, wait a minute.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, geez. Well, yeah, it is a very recognizable shirt. Whoever picks it up at the Goodwill is we're gonna know it. We're gonna see it. We've also got a great a bit of video coming up in Positive Reflections today. As a matter of fact, an acceptance speech. We're going to bring you a portion of an acceptance speech that moved me. This I don't know if I want to spoil it yet or not.
Don't. It's
okay,
so good.
I won't. But this individual who we're going to show has. His personal life, his professional career has had its ups and downs, to say the very least, and we love a good comeback story, and so we'll get to that in Positive Reflections. Charles Adler coming up in just a second, but before we get to Adler, I want to remind you about the conversations we have and how they happen. They happen because of sponsors that are committed to real talk, to having those conversations that push us toward excellence, that educate us, that allow us to deepen our understandings of issues, like Athabasca University, Canada's open university. Take your education to the next level. Athabasca University is Canada's anyone, anywhere, anytime open university for advanced learning, and AU is sure to have something that meets your needs, meets your ambition, and fits your lifestyle. You can get a Canadian education online with Athabasca U, no matter where you live. The experience different from other universities by design. They're more accessible, more flexible, more equitable, and more personalized for everyone. Your journey with Athabasca University could start literally today by visiting them online at athabascau.ca. I was able to spend some quality time. It was me and Moses, our boxer, in Jasper over the weekend. And man, oh man, do we love walks around Lac Beauvert. And of course, he's just sniffing. He can tell that there's elk all around him, right? He's trying to find the elk. Boy, oh boy, do we ever love our dogs, right? We would do anything for our pets, including feeding them the most quality food we can find on the market. We feed our dogs Grand Dog Essentials, quality raw food. I want to draw your attention to their website, granddog.ca. Whether you're a dog lover, a cat lover, or both, check out their blog for some new posts, including high-quality protein for dogs and cats. What is it, and why is this a conversation that matters? Grand Dog Essentials delivers quality raw food to your door. If you live in Calgary, Edmonton, or Central Alberta, you can join their mailing list, and the promo code REALTALK knocks 10% off your first order at granddog.ca. At Friesen Brothers, we want to remind you, I know it feels like it's a ways away, but I want you to circle your calendar for the 1st of the month. The 1st of February is your next chance to knock 15% off your grocery bill. That's a huge deal. 15% off purchases of $75 or more the 1st of every month at Friesen Brothers. Don't forget, they're in 16 different Alberta communities, Alberta grown, Alberta owned. You can learn more about Friesen Brothers, including recipe inspiration, at friesen.com. That's FRESON.com. Hey, speaking of high grocery prices, people are right now, I think, with inflation and everything else, it's really for a lot of folks become the story of 2022 into 2023. Wanted to let Real Talkers know that we're going to be checking in with the food professor. That's how he's billed himself. Dr. Sylvain Charlebois is going to join us on Wednesday's show. There was that big story. I know, they're a competitor to Friesen Brothers. But, Loblaw was just getting absolutely crucified.
Bob Loblaw.
Bob Loblaw's Law Blog. People were going at Galen Weston, the chairman of Loblaw, over last week after a reporter in Ontario posted a photo of $37 chicken breasts, and people were going, what the hell is going on right here? So we thought this was a really good one. When it comes to accusations around price gouging and really taking advantage of consumers, Dr. Charlebois has done a really good job of sort of sifting through that and focusing the conversation where it needs to go. So make sure you circle Wednesday on your calendar for some real talk on that. Charles Adler, the Titan of Talk, Emmy Award-winning host, RTDNA Lifetime Achievement Award winner, joins us every Monday. It's one of our favorite traditions here on the show. We get to find out how his weekend was. What happened to your Real Talk mug there? It looks like you got chocolate sauce all over it.
Yeah, no, it's...
You going with a mocha this morning, my man?
You caught me in pigpen mode this morning. I know it's not a national holiday in Canada, but I honor the holiday, and I guess I'm in a holiday spirit. I'm thinking about Dr. King and what he did for so many of us. And I guess I spilled on my coffee here. I'll just hold up the Diet Coke can is still pristine. I've always got to ask this question because I'm an old radio hound, audio hound. How's the
it's always good. We'll never let you on the air if it sucks.
Okay.
So Johnny makes sure that you're sounding perfect and ready to go. I've got my headphones so low so I don't hear, because we got so many people who are professionals and would be professionals listening to this podcast all over the world. The reason I can't tell is because I don't have my headphones up loud, because if I have my headphones up loud, I start speaking like, well, hi, Ryan. Yeah.
My authoritative, I don't want to get into what we used to call Ron radio. So that's why I don't have the headphones.
Hey, I was talking to somebody a while ago. This was what do I say? Like a fledgling sounds to me to be like almost insulting. I don't want to say a fledgling broadcaster, but somebody in the very, very early stages of their career. And they were talking about radio and podcasting, and they said, I don't know if I have a really great broadcasting voice. And I said, you know what? And I'd be curious to pick your brain on this, because you did have that, you have, it's present tense, but you have this like velvety voice that always went a long way, obviously, in your career. And people will stay tuned into shows longer where the sound of the voice is appealing, right? But I said to this young person, I said, I think that it's changing in the sense of like talk radio and broadcasting no longer has the people doing the big performative voices. It seems to be more real, more sincere, more sort of like legitimately, this is the voice that God gave me type idea.
Yeah, the problem is that so many of the people who got into the business, people I call voices with feet, they've got the great voices, but it's not attached to anything. It's not attached to a great value system. It's not attached to a great mind. It's not attached to anything that's compelling. So that kind of ruined it for the sort of great radio voice. If you've got a voice and a mind and it's attached, like Ryan Jesperson, God bless you, and there's no question about it, it's an advantage. But the idea that it's only about the voice, it's never been true.
Yeah.
And it's certainly not true anymore. Unfortunately, here's the other side of this. There are some people who think that a person who has absolutely no radio voice and doesn't have elocution, diction, all those things that involve being able to pronounce things properly so that everyone understands them. It's not about having a mellifluous, velvety voice. This is about speaking in a way that people understand what you're saying. If that's what you have, that's called a problem. So there's this awful term out there. Kenny got into trouble with it a while ago. He talked about people having unaccented English,
right?
And this was seen as an attack on culture, on multiculturalism. I want to dispense with that trash. This isn't about having an accent or not having an accent, because the accent is irrelevant. What is not irrelevant is being able to pronounce things in such a way so that almost everybody listening, regardless of what culture they may come from, can hear you. And unfortunately, broadcasting today in the effort to be, quote, natural and original and authentic and whatever, does have many people on the air, television and radio and podcasting, that, in my opinion, and maybe I'm a little too traditional here, Ryan, I put all my biases in the shop window, okay? In my opinion, many of them are not meticulous about having the kind of enunciation that makes it understandable. If you don't care enough about me as a listener and a viewer, as a consumer of what you're saying, if you don't care enough about me to be able to pronounce words in a way that I can understand them, I'm sorry, that's amateur. That's not professional. It's not authentic. It's not anything that I would be proud of.
Over the weekend, Russian attacks on civilian targets in Ukraine have drawn the ire and the condemnation of the international community, including Sweden, which currently holds the European Union presidency, calling the attack on civilian targets in Dnipro, the city of Dnipro, that left more than 30 civilians dead, war crimes. And I know that this is something that you spoke out against strongly. In particular, I saw on your Twitter at Charles Adler, you linked to the New York Times piece, which I thought was really good. As Russians steal Ukraine's art, they attack its identity too. I don't know what there is to say, Charles, about these images, these horrific images of rescue efforts and now being characterized as recovery efforts. This apartment building blown to smithereens, parents buried in the rubble with their children. How does the international, what changes in a war, in a conflict like this, that obviously, draws the ire of the international community, but still, with regards to involvement, nothing will change. So how do you wrap your mind around it?
Well, once again, at the risk of being called a warmonger, and I've been called worse, once again, another bias in the shop window. The world should be in Ukraine. As many countries, including Canada, we should be there, no different than we were involved in World War II. Russia has become a terrorist organization, no different than Al-Qaeda. Vladimir Putin is no different than bin Laden. He actually enjoys watching atrocities being committed. Nobody on earth believes, I don't care what the ideology is, nobody believes that you must kill men, women, children, grandparents in non-military, non-strategic areas like apartment buildings. Nobody believes that that you need to steal a nation's art, try to rob it of its identity, cut off its water supply, cut off its power. Nobody believes that those are acts of war. Those are war crimes. Nobody believes that Vladimir Putin is defending the people of Russia from the people of Ukraine. So since nobody believes that there's any legitimacy in this war, it would be most legitimate for the entire world to stand up to Russia. Standing up to Russia, standing up to Putin, doesn't mean making all sorts of declarations, what some people call virtue signaling. It means actually getting in his grill and defeating him the way we defeated the Nazi Empire.
Yeah, I just sort of, I look at this and you wonder what has to happen, or you wonder what has to change, or what will change, or ultimately where this goes. And you've got a country, if you looked at a lot of the public commentary and a lot of the speculation from experts when Russia's aggression first began, I mean, when this war started, the story was all about how Ukraine was bravely standing up to the Russians, and look at civilians called into action. I mean, we sat down in this studio just last week, Charles, with two Edmontonians, one of them just days away from heading over to Ukraine. She's going to be helping teach combat care to firefighters and police officers that were not firefighters and police officers a year ago. They were civilians. They had regular day jobs. And now they've been called into action, and they're trying to train them up as quickly as possible. Well, this bravery, this standing up to Russia, has now lasted more than a year. And I know that if, the average person, and the purpose of my questions to you, the average person sits here and wonders, well, where is this going from here now? I mean, you have to assume over the weekend, this represents a change in this entire story.
Hitler was not at war with Poland. Hitler was not at war with the United States, with the United Kingdom. Hitler was at war with democracy. Hitler was at war with humanity. Humanity responded, admittedly, much, much too late. We are also late here. But the most important principle that needs to be enunciated here is that Vladimir Putin is not at war with Ukraine. Ukraine is paying the heaviest price. But Vladimir Putin is at war with all of us. And until all of us begin to understand that, we won't be doing the right things. The right thing would be to militarily defeat Russia. The world needs to defeat Russia because the world needs to send a signal to history that never again means never again. Not sometimes, not most of the time. Never means never.
I've been looking forward to talking to you. Our conversation last Monday, an impromptu one, sure lit a fire under a bunch of Real Talk audience members who I suspect will expect us to circle back and talk about a story out of the Alberta courts, which we touched on, a woman who's lost 2 court challenges, an unvaccinated Albertan who was bumped off of a wait list for eligibility for an organ transplant. You and I shared our opinions on that, shooting from the hip. Quite frankly, it pissed off some people, but it prompted some great subsequent discussions on the show, Charles, including a great chat with Professor Timothy Caulfield. I encourage people to check it out. Turns out he's been doing research on this exact thing for the past few weeks. You've had a week to reflect on it, and I know that you were eager to have a chance to take it on again. Where's your head at a week after we had that chat?
Well, to sound like a politician, I misspoke. Okay. I will defer to Caulfield every single time.
Sure.
And I could give you the reasons for misspeaking, but then I actually do sound like a politician. I was wrong. I apologize for being wrong. If all that had to happen here was for this person to get vaccinated to become eligible, I have no problem with that at all. I was wrong, and Dr. Caulfield was right, and I agree. I know there are all kinds of people who say in the world of public relations, never apologize. I take the opposite point of view. When I become aware of facts that I was not aware of, when the facts change, so does my opinion, and I don't apologize for that either.
Yeah, I think that never apologize is really bad advice. I also think that always apologize is really bad advice, and I can appreciate your thoughtful response to that. I wanted to stick on a healthcare story because I noticed that you shared this opinion piece. It was published. The editorial board, the Toronto Sun, pushed this out just yesterday. Private healthcare, reads the headline, is a fact of life. Now, the jumping off point for the op-ed is Ontario's Premier Doug Ford has suggested that the province is looking to go to private healthcare providers to try to ease some of the burden and cut down on the wait lists of people that are waiting for surgeries, in particular minor surgeries. And I know because you tweeted about it that this opinion piece resonated with you. Any talk about private healthcare in Canada, you're kicking a hornet's nest. But please don't approach too carefully. Where's your head at on this strategy with Premier Ford and the bigger conversation?
As you know, I'm not a big supporter of Premier Ford, so this has nothing to do with Premier Ford, although I do think that Pierre Poilievre has a lot to learn from Premier Ford, and if Pierre Poilievre actually spent some time with Premier Ford, whether he did it physically, intellectually, it doesn't matter to me. He probably would be doing a whole lot better in a province that kind of matters. The math says Ontario kind of matters. All right, putting all of that aside, Ryan, that I come to a lot of opinions through personal experience and personal connection. I'm connected to a woman in Montreal called my mother. Nobody believes in public health care more than my mother. And yes, she donates like a lot of us donate to hospitals. I don't want to get into our what we do charitably publicly, because that becomes a whole different animal. And that's something my father never believed in. He believed in keeping, what you give, keeping it anonymous, and I want to respect him for that. So I will just say this, that the public healthcare system was not taking care of my mother's basic need for an MRI for her kidney. Not doing it. Waiting list. It got to the point, because they kept giving her meds, and the meds they gave her were, I have to say it, opioids. Mm-hmm. She was getting addicted to the opioids and getting depressed, to the point where she was on the phone to me asking me, asking me to help her get on the I have a hard time saying it, asking me to help her to die.
Yes. Okay?
Medically made, as they say. Anyway, that's what she was asking for.
Huh.
That got me off my ass.
Yeah.
And I did what any son, any daughter, anyone who cares about anyone they love would do. I made some phone calls, and I was able to get her an MRI. In fact, I was able to get her an MRI in the same building where she had a doctor with access to public care, in the very, very same building. I don't want to bog down in the logistics. The point is, in getting her an MRI, I got the information that we needed, and the information we needed was she had not one, but two kidney stones. This woman in her 80s, 2 kidney stones. She is not alone. I wouldn't be talking about her if she only represented one file, not just one file. Many people are in the exact same position. And so I did whatever I could to have those kidney stones removed, and they were removed just a few clicks from where she got her MRI. So all of this was done in for-profit care. Now, what happened for her cannot happen for everyone, because not everyone has someone who can make the quick connections, the quick contacts, and roll out whatever it takes to help save their mother. I want everybody to have access to quality care. Okay, and I have said publicly, I've said this before, I'll say this again. I will put my left hand on the Bible and raise my right hand and swear an oath to always be on the side of equal access to quality care for everyone. But at the moment, what I've just described to you is reality in this country. This country is the Adler family's promised land, and I promise to do whatever it takes to get access to quality care for everyone, not just the sons of former successful talk show hosts, blah, 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 for everyone. For somebody watching this to say that I'm a hypocrite because I helped to save my mother's life, and yes, it did save my mother's life. It was a life and death situation. For anyone who says I'm a hypocrite for doing that, I'll plead guilty to that.
Charles, anybody in your situation would do absolutely anything they possibly could, and anybody who says they wouldn't is lying.
But I'm trying to level, Ryan, as I always do, I think. And if I'm wrong about that, please confront me. But I want to level with all of the possible criticism and all of the critics. I agree with those people who want equal access to quality care.
Sure.
But I disagree with the idea that we currently have that. We do not have that. And you cannot get better without getting out of denial. And I just think this idea that the words for profit need to stop the train is ridiculous. The idea that profit stops opportunity, wrong. The idea that profit is a bad word, wrong. However, I want the card, whatever card we have in whichever province we're blessed to live in this country, whatever that health card is called, I want that health card to be an insurance card to make sure that people like my mother get access without anyone else having to pay a single dollar. We pay enough in taxes to basically get that public health insurance. And by the way, that's what universal access means to me. It's not about some people are making profit, others aren't. I mean, has anyone ever heard of Moderna? I think Moderna makes a profit. Pfizer makes a profit. All of the people who make stethoscopes, yes, the doctors who are private are also making a profit. Profit is not a terrible word, but dogma is a terrible word. And dogmatically being attached to nobody in the system will make any profit, when we know that lots of people people are cleaning hospitals. There are private companies that are cleaning hospitals. There are private companies that are making burgers and donuts. They're making a profit. This idea of being anti-profit dogmatically is what, to me, is arresting the development of a system that gives everyone what Mrs. Adler got a few weeks ago.
Well said, Chuck. Always appreciate your candor. It's always great to see your face. Have a wonderful week, and we'll talk to you again next Monday.
God bless you.
It's the Titan of Talk, Charles Adler, just an absolutely wonderful friend of this show. I popped into the live chat. I love the engagement here this morning. People are like on it this morning. This is great. And Erica says, I don't know why people act like there aren't private options already. My husband had a 4-month wait for an MRI, didn't want to wait in pain, so he paid out of pocket, and he had it the next day. That from Erica. I mean, of course, there are many others. I mean, let alone like dentists and chiropractors, and I mean, we could really get into it. People that travel, like they call it the medical tourism, right? You want to go get surgery done. People will go down to Mexico, go down to Arizona. By the way, if you subscribe to our Real Talk Sunday message, it's free, obviously. It's an email that goes out Sunday evening, kind of teeing up the week to come and letting you know about some things, typically some exclusive mentions in there. You just go to ryanjesperson.com, scroll to the bottom of the page, you can subscribe. If you got that in your inbox last night, you already know that on Thursday's show coming up, we'll check in with Dr. Holly Geyer. She's an addictions specialist at the Mayo Clinic in Arizona. She's got a new book out, Tackling the Opioid Crisis. She says that she's got a solution. And so I look forward to that coming up on Thursday. Great to see Dr. Bradley Martin, by the way, in the chat as well, a physician who joined us last week on the show to share his thoughts on that conversation that we were having. I love when subject matter extends beyond a specific show. I mean, last week we talked about that standard of staying on a wait list for organ transplantation in the context of it being, in the relevance of it being vaccine status, COVID vaccination status. And Dr. Martin was kind enough to give us his time and share his thoughts. I said it to his face when he was on the show. I love how measured he is, how rational he is. His empathy is so evident. You know, he's talking about private healthcare this morning. He says, I think some of the radiology examples, like prompted by what Erica said, are valid. He says because they're privately owned machines, they're funded by the radiologist, and they're also used for public use. He says so that's a decent example of a private piece that doesn't get in the way of the public system. That Star op-ed quotes Justice Beverly McLaughlin, Chief Justice at the time, when she said, quote, in a ruling, access to a waiting list. This was back in Quebec, Johnny, back in 2005. Mm-hmm. There was a ruling that went all the way up to the Supreme Court that challenged, that essentially said that the prohibition against private healthcare in Quebec specifically violated the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and the Supreme Court agreed. And Chief Justice McLaughlin at that point, by the way, out of Alberta, a legendary Albertan, said, quote, access to a waiting list is not access to health care. Of course, the opposition politicians in Ontario are furious about this, right? Merritt Stiles, no, I'm laughing. Merritt Stiles was recently acclaimed as leader of the provinces of Ontario's New Democrats and tweeted, step one, deprive the healthcare system of resources until it's on the brink of collapse. And then step two, push people desperate for care toward private clinics. Said the Ontario New Democrat leader, we won't let him, Ford, get away with this. You can let us know what you think. We'd love to hear from people that have firsthand experience here. What did your family do? I mean, Erica just shared about her husband's MRI. What has your family had to do? Or what is your family considering? Or what's your scenario? Talk at ryanjesperson.com is where you can find us. Ashley Wanamaker in just a second, registered psychologist, accidental TikTok therapist. That conversation with Charles was presented by our friends at Eden Landscaping, a custom landscape builder with more than 20 years of on-the-ground experience in Edmonton and area. Today's a great day to get the ball rolling on bringing your outdoor space to life. You're like, man, it's the middle of January. Yeah. But if you wait until April or May, when the daffodils start popping up in early June, to start the conversation about getting your landscaping project done, guess what? It's not going to be done in time for your Canada Day party. It's why you got to get in touch with Mike today to start talking about your vision. Show him your Pinterest board. Show him the pages you've been ripping out of Architectural Digest. He'll get your real property report. They'll start drawing up the blueprints. You don't have to hire anybody else. They are a one-stop, full-service shop. And then, of course, as soon as that ground thaws, they are into it. And before you know it, your home will have the outdoor oasis that you deserve. Eden Landscaping, a proud partner of Real Talk, and that's a two-way street. You can find them online at landscapeedmonton.ca. At Local Environmental Services, they're keeping it local in Alberta and Saskatchewan when it comes to garbage, recycling, fence rentals, water hauling. Well, what does that mean? What does it mean to keep it local? Well, it means that the value system is different. Yeah, that's right. You can check out their core values in a feature video online at localenvironmental.ca. Learn more about their operations out of Whitecourt, out of Edmonton, out of Regina, and understand what sets them apart. They guarantee if you contact them today, you're going to get a better deal. So whether it's a small business or a big business you're running, it makes sense to do business with Local Environmental Services. And John, it's still January, which means it is still buy one, get one free. Woo! At the Dairy Queens of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park, we're talking about boxes, 6-packs, we'll call them, of dilly bars and DQ sandwiches. They've got the dairy-free dilly bars as well that Johnny loves.
You gotta get a 2-for when you go.
Oh, yeah, 2-for, a flat. We're going to start talking in those terms. These are the Dairy Queens and Palisades, Nemeo, Newcastle, and Westmount. That's Northwest Edmonton. And, of course, the beautifully just redesigned open location in Sherwood Park on Baseline Road. Boy, did they ever do a beautiful job with that shop. That's right, through the month of January, buy one, get one free on 6-packs of the world-famous DQ sandwiches and, of course, one of my personal favorites, the dilly bars.
Going broke on dilly bars this month.
You're going to get to a point where you end up spending $1,000 on a new freezer so you can have
Would
just
that be
just the
wrong?
straight-up Dairy
Would
Queen
it be
freezer.
wrong?
Well, I don't actually have a good answer with regards to why we don't have a dedicated DQ freezer here in the studio.
You
I
should.
think we're going to need to get that figured out. I want to introduce you to our next guest in just a moment, but perhaps she might just do a better job introducing herself. This is Ashley Wanamaker, as taken from her TikTok.
Hi, I'm a professional trend forecaster, and these are my predictions for 2023. This year, it's not for you. It's, in fact, for them. Not sure how to do this trend? Easy. You could just think of anyone who isn't you and do that. It's 2023. Let's bring back the empathy. Have you been doing inner child work? Well, tuck that BB into bed because it's inner angsty teenage time. Let's rage. Up next, did you spend 2022 living more unapologetically? Well, buckle up, baby, because apologizing's back. It's time to listen. We're going to validate. We're going to take responsibility when we've hurt others. This trend is especially gorgeous for those of us with a fair complexion. Let that accountability shine. And of course, we're going to continue to what? To feel those feelings. Emotional regulation is a classic. But this year, we're going to add a little twist. We're going to know that it's important to feel our feelings, and we're also going to know that feelings aren't facts. Which leads me to nuance. Black and white thinking, forget it. Nuance is in. We're really looking forward to seeing how this trend shows up within the confines of social media in particular. So, do it.
Absolutely love it. Ashley Wanamaker is a registered psychologist. She's an accidental TikTok therapist and founder of the Being Human Club, a feminist mental health center in beautiful Calgary, Alberta. Ashley specializes in working with trauma, anxiety, depression, grief, eating disorders, and body image concerns, and she's always been a great friend of the show. It's nice to see you again, and I don't think it's too late in the month to wish you a Happy New Year, is it?
No, Happy New Year.
Happy New
Happy
Year.
to be here.
Yeah, I loved your performance as the professional trend forecaster. I thought you really nailed that one.
I like how you chose the only TikTok where I overtly misrepresent myself.
Yeah.
As a trend forecaster.
Yeah.
I'm not a psychologist.
Yeah, but I always thought we always think when we're going to use a video to introduce somebody, what will give us the greatest jumping off talking point, and so there it is. You say you no longer living unapologetically. Now is the time to start apologizing. We just had a moment on the show about 15 minutes ago where a legendary broadcaster, Charles Adler, looks into the camera on a take that he had on the show last week and just basically said, "Yeah, I didn't have all the facts. I was wrong."
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Music to my ears.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
We need to be doing more of that.
Hey, are you the type of person, like, I mean, I know that you're a professional counselor and obviously a registered psychologist, but can we get into your personal life and maybe how you operate when the calendar flips to a new year? Do you make resolutions? Do you use that as a point to evaluate how you've been doing and how you want to be doing and how to get there in between?
Yes and no. I think I love like a fresh start and a new year. I stay away from resolutions in their traditional form because I think they don't work most of the time. But I think it's important to constantly be reflecting on, how's it going? Do I want things to be different? Do I like how things are going? What's important to me? So I think I do that all the time. I think I do that in my work and my personal life, but I do think the new year is a beautiful, set reminder to go like, how did that go?
Yeah.
And what would I like to go differently?
Yeah. And what would I like to look like or feel like or be doing or be who would I like to be with or whatever the case may be a year from now? I think goal setting is important, but sometimes we can get discouraged, right? We set goals, but is it fair to say that as human beings we very rarely achieve them? Maybe that's too much of painting with one brush.
I mean, I think that's the cliche, right? Is that we're a couple weeks, like you said, into January and people are starting to fall off their resolutions. So I think how we define goals are really important. I think that what we tend to do as humans is we're a dramatic group of beings, right? Like we like all or nothing. So we go from not having gone for a walk for a year to being like, I'm running that marathon now. And then we get really upset when we don't do that. So I think examining why we're setting some of the intentions or the goals that we are setting is really important. And I think it's one of the biggest things that gets overlooked often.
So when you talk to your, what do you say, patients?
I say clients. Patients feels weird to me.
It does. Yeah. Okay. So when you're talking
power imbalance.
Yeah. Fair. More contemplative answers. This is a good theme kicking off our week here on Real Talk. But when you're talking to people about how to set like meaningful and achievable goals, is there a boilerplate process to follow, or is it so individualized that it'd be tough to say?
I think generally, before we even start talking about how to achieve a goal, I'm always really curious about why you'd like to achieve a goal. So, unsurprisingly, the trope of New Year's resolutions often centers around like fitness and weight and food. And so when I get people coming into my office and they say, I want to lose weight, the first question is always like, okay, why? What does that mean to you? Where does that come from? Because we have all of these factors that influence how we see ourselves and where we'd like to go. And so sometimes we have beliefs that we've just, internalized that maybe don't actually resonate with our values or who we are, but that we think we should be doing. And that can be a reason people don't achieve goals. Often we want to get to the meaning of the why because it helps us set out like a more successful path forward to know what is the emotion we're trying to feel, what's the meaning we're trying to achieve, rather than focusing just on the surface of the behavior or the like final objective.
It was back on January 4th. We welcomed a couple of Athabasca University professors to the show, Kristen Roger and Heather McLean, and they were talking about Taylor Swift's video in particular, the one that sort of garnered a lot of attention, described as fatphobic. And it was an interesting conversation. It was one that challenged my understanding of fatphobia and maybe some of the focuses that we want to have, or conversations, bigger ones as a society that we want to have. And then just this past Friday in our Trash Talk feature, we had a letter from a guy, from Johnny K, a real talker who sort of took aim at that feature interview and shared his own thoughts on that. Sort of unapologetically fit was the tone of his email, and I hope I'm not unfairly summarizing that. But you specifically reached out to me and said that this was something that you wanted to talk about, and you're an expert on this. So what's our angle of approach here?
Oh, I have lots of thoughts and feelings about Johnny's message. And I think that, the conversation earlier in the week was centered around a Taylor Swift video. So probably fair that, what the purpose of fat activism wasn't discussed thoroughly. But I thought there were so many parts of that were so interesting when we reflect on, and actually good examples of more covert anti-fat bias. So I want to start by saying, even fatphobia, I want us to be curious about that term, because what we're really talking about isn't, a true phobia like we would diagnose. It's not a mental health issue we're talking about. What we're talking about is prejudice and discrimination towards a group of people. So fatphobia in and of itself is a bit misleading. We can talk about anti-fatness or anti-fat bias. And the other, I guess, thing off the top of my head that I really wanted to say that I thought was very interesting in this letter in particular was fat activists aren't trying to make you fat. Fat activists are making sure that fat people have human rights. So that's like a really important thing that I think was missed in that letter that I wanted to highlight. Because you can hear Johnny getting threatened, perhaps is the right word, to say like, well, I work out and I want to work out. And I could be wrong, but in that interview, I didn't hear anybody saying everyone should stop working out.
This is a fair point.
That was an interesting response.
Yeah, no, it's a fair point. And I appreciate you taking it on. When you talk about, I mean, you do a lot of work with people, right? I'm working with like eating disorders and body image concerns. And I really appreciate you saying if someone says, well, I want to lose weight, asking why. Because you'd probably get a million different answers, right? I mean, some of it might be like, I don't know, I want to feel healthier, I want to be whatever. But then for a lot of other people, it's probably like a lot of external factors, right? Like, how do you recognize as an individual? What do you say to somebody? And it doesn't necessarily have to be weight related. It could be related to any change that somebody wants to make in their life. How do you understand if that's a change that you're making for, to quote The Bachelor, the right reasons?
Right. Well, I think with all of these goals, we're often not taught to sit and go, like, what do I think? So we have all these beliefs floating around, like, I'm supposed to do this job, or I'm supposed to get married, or I'm supposed to do all these things. And we often, and I think until many of us go to therapy, we don't stop to go like, oh, what do I think about that? Is that something that actually I feel? And so, trying to gather the information to go sort of, where does this come from? And when we are talking about, the answer you just gave, even if someone says, oh, I want to be healthier, it's like, what does that mean? Because that's probably one of the most common things I hear. And we often as a society, when we're talking about anti-fat bias, we conflate health and being thin.
Sure.
And actually, those are different things. And actually, health has been co-opted into this idea of like physical health, right? Like when we reference health and wellness, what we're really talking about is, what we put in our bodies and how we move. And that's certainly, in the pie chart of health, that's a slice, but that's not what health means. We're missing emotional health, mental health, social health, sexual health, occupational health, financial health. There's all these other parts of us that get pushed aside and that are just as important as physical health and intersecting with physical health. So even that question of like, I want to be healthier, it's like, okay, what does that mean? What does that mean? We go down and down and down to go like, what are we saying? What are we talking about?
Well, there's probably there are grossly unhealthy ways to get thin.
Sure.
To state the very obvious. I think the pursuit of thinness is probably for some people, probably one of the worst things they could do. But again, I don't venture, I shouldn't be wading into a conversation on this. I'm not an expert, but just like the way that real people talk, I think you're right. There certainly is that understanding of, but I've seen like more conversations, I think open-minded conversations among the general public, including on shows like this, about breaking some of those notions that people have held. Do you see it? Like, do you see public attitudes changing from your perspective?
Sure, slowly, really slowly. I think we have a lot of work left to do. That letter that we were talking about that was on Trash Talk, which I can't say without hearing your voice of like, I'm not going to do your Trash Talk voice, but in my head every time
I would
you say
love
that,
to hear it. I would love to hear it. Johnny could sample it. We could have like a guest. We could have like a guest voiceover that you could do once a month or something.
No, I will not take you up on that.
Okay,
but yeah, like, so thinking about that letter and thinking about how Johnny in the letter was like, yeah, let's not body shame. Like, I'm not going to start screaming at people in the street that they're fat, or I'm going to like defend them if that's happening, which is great news. That's wonderful. And also, that's not the only way that these attitudes negatively affect people. So if we think about even, if we take the word fat out and we insert like race, great, overt racism of like, being objectively discriminatory towards Black people. Most people would agree at this point in time, I hope, that that's unacceptable and people would stand up and say something. But we also know that there's all these microaggressions that occur. And we also know that there's all these systemic issues that occur. And so, thinking about how, for example, in healthcare, the use of the BMI, which is truly nonsense and has been proven to be not only nonsense, but rooted in racism. So it's not only like a bad predictor of health incomes, it's what most medical practitioners, most physicians are taught in med school, and it's still perpetuated. And so if we look at the kind of care that someone who is fat gets versus someone who is in a thin body gets, like that's a big issue. That's a big concern in terms of harm and in terms of health outcomes. So we have to sort of look at, do I think that things are changing? Yes. Do we have loads of work still to do? Yes. And you can hear a microaggression actually in that letter when Johnny's saying like, people want to be fat, they can be fat, but like, I go to the gym every day and it's because of my health history. And it's like, that's awesome. We do know, like, move your body. We should all be moving our bodies. But the assumption that, Johnny isn't fat because he goes to the gym once a day is quite naive, actually, because what we do know is that, between 30 to 80% of our weight is determined by genetics. And there's actually lots of research that shows, exercise as a form of weight loss doesn't work, similar to dieting. So does that mean we shouldn't move our bodies? No, we should totally move our bodies for different reasons. But the assumption that, Johnny is not fat because he is engaging in, exercise consistently and shows this self-discipline is wrong and is inherently judgmental of saying, and fat people aren't doing that. There's fat people that do Ironmans. There's fat people that run marathons. There's fat people who have infinitely less health problems than I do. And I'm, in a straight size body. So I think the harm is in those assumptions. And I think we do need to dig down a bit deeper as a society and start really like acknowledging those things so we can change them.
Oh, we're talking about a trash talk that ran on, it was Friday the 6th of January, if my memory is correct. And then I don't know if you heard Ashley just this last Friday's on Friday the 13th, but there was a follow-up to it from a real talker who talked about her own personal experience and trying to lose weight, including the gastric sleeve surgery and basically her upbringing. She said that, in her mind, the most unhealthy that she's ever been was at 24 years of age when she was 100 pounds. And it was a really powerful email, and it's never lost on me. And I always try to really say it clearly, like spell it out, how much it means to us. When people, I think it takes a great amount of courage to write in, to use your name, and to say, this is my experience. And I'm so grateful for that. We talked about your TikTok following, and you sort of, you present yourself as an accidental TikTok therapist, which I love. Your bio on TikTok, you're at Ashley Wanamaker, the TikTok psychologist you need, not the one you want. Tell us what that means.
Well, first of all, I guess I made a TikTok early in the pandemic, truly for my friends, and was like, this is fine. No one will ever find it. As long as no clients see it, that's a fun thing I did. And then I had some videos go viral, which was so wildly uncomfortable to me. So I feel
like millions of views.
Yeah. So that was really uncomfortable because I'm really comfortable being, an expert, and the nature of the work I do isn't about me. It's about, the people I work with. And so I'm really comfortable doing that. I'm less comfortable talking about myself. So when things did go viral, I was like, oh God, what have I done? But then tried to leverage that into doing something useful. So what feels useful to me is using that platform to provide mental health information to people who might not otherwise have access. And so the reason that my bio says what it says is that a few of the first videos that went viral was me saying sort of these like unpleasant truths that people don't often want to hear, but that are really important. I think a lot of people think that psychologists are just like super nice, understanding people. And certainly being an empathetic, safe human is really important. But a lot of my job is actually telling people things they don't want to hear. I think that's also my responsibility. And so I think that's what people tended to like more, is when I was like, I'm going to hurt your feelings a little bit for good, hopefully.
Yeah.
So sort of just, that's what my bio explains, is me saying things people might not want to hear, but might be important for them to hear.
I know that no mental health professional, including yourself, is ever going to suggest that like, reels on Instagram or posts on TikTok will replace therapy. And obviously there's an immense amount of value in therapy. And I hate to say it, but for people who can afford it, or people who have access to it, or people who have coverage for it. But I do think it's super cool that for all of the ills and frustrations and kind of the nastiness and gnarliness of social media, that it also provides opportunities to do exactly what you're saying. For somebody to follow you on Instagram, or in particular TikTok, and every day or every few days get a little blast of wisdom or insight or direction. It's really cool. And if you think, again, I know I sound like I'm 95 years old here, but that wasn't even a thing 5 years ago, let alone 10 years ago. And to me, I've been making a real concerted effort lately to start following people on my personal accounts that edify me, that encourage me, that educate me. And I'm really grateful for it, including yours.
Oh, thanks, Ryan. Yeah, it's happening so much more. And I think when COVID happened, it was an interesting time, particularly for like therapists online, because previous to COVID, we're really taught in our training to not exist online, which seems sort of outrageous now, but it was like, don't be online, don't let clients see anything about you. We were kind of taught to be these one-dimensional like therapists who are only professional, which is problematic for lots of reasons. But then COVID happened and everyone, for lack of a better word, was freaking out. And so I think a lot of therapists felt a duty or a responsibility to help offer some coping strategies for people who might not otherwise have had them. And so now it's sort of the Wild West, which I think you're right. I think having, democratizing mental health information is really important. And with that comes a whole bunch of people who might not be held to the same ethical standards appearing online, offering mental health information that is wrong. Like if you notice on my TikTok, it's unethical for me to offer therapy to people who are not my clients. Even my clients, if they send me, communications on social media, it's like, that is not therapy. That's explicit. I'm not to be diagnosing anybody. So there are also accounts that drive me nuts a little bit, because it's offering all this information that then people who might not otherwise have gone through the proper, training or aren't being held to a standard to protect people are misusing. And so that's sort of the dark side of that I caution people away from.
That's such a great point. And I'm thinking of some specific names, but I don't think you nor I are looking to pick fights right now. Unless you are. We can go throw down and let's go. How much of your counseling was like, are you, by the way, you're sitting in an actual office, right? That's not a fake background behind you.
It's my real office.
Look at it's like beautiful. Is that the Being Human Club? Is that
Yes.
That's what we're seeing there.
Yes.
So
This is my being human club.
you sit with people, like I'm noticing hand sanitizer on the table and stuff. I'm assuming that this is actually where some of your sessions happen. This is where you sit
Yep.
with people. Before COVID, were you 100% in person? During COVID, did you maintain operations at full capacity via Zoom or whatever? And then where are you now with regards to that balance? Like how, and that must present challenges, by the way, to not be in person with someone.
Yeah. The start of the pandemic was a wild time. So the start of the pandemic, I would say almost all my sessions were in person, which I really loved. And then so I went from spending like 9 or 10 hours a day with humans in a room to staring at a screen. And I was at a point in my career where I had just stopped taking new clients on because my practice was probably a little too full. And I was like, okay, here is good. But a lot of the clients I was seeing at the time, were doing really well, so I wouldn't see them as often. And then when the pandemic hit, suddenly like everyone was in crisis, and we were all in the same crisis, which is a weird thing. You're not usually in, the trauma that you're treating with people,
right?
So I went from being with people all day to staring at a screen, like in my condo, this tiny little spare room, and I felt so tired, and that was shocking to me. We now have research to back up that for psychologists, for therapists, for counselors, doing this kind of online work can feel more draining. I wasn't allowed to go back to my old office for about 3 months. I had to operate from my home. And so those were wild times. I was working like ridiculous hours at that point. And then as the pandemic has ebbed and flowed with case counts, having people come back in, making sure everyone's being safe, I feel very fortunate. I'm immunocompromised, so I feel so fortunate that my clients have been so respectful of that. So I have to weigh my personal risk too. But, at Being Human Club, we really pride ourselves on having really kept things safe. We still mask in all the common areas. We have HEPA filters in every single office. We're socially distanced enough. So, really fortunate for the community we've created here, and for all of our clients have been so respectful of that. People tend to take their mask off once they come into the office, and they don't come. We ask that they don't come, obviously, if they have any symptoms. So, so now, now it's interesting. Now I would say probably like a 60-40 split, depending. We're located in downtown. So a lot of people who used to just walk on over on their lunch break, people weren't coming downtown as often. Things are changing a bit more now. But some people I think will probably be virtual forever because of convenience or because of safety.
Yeah.
And I have total respect for that. I kind of love the balance now of having some in person and some virtual. It feels much better than it did at the start, for sure.
Yeah. Is counseling changing? Like does the I don't know, what is it? Is it an art or a science? It's both. It's an art and a science. Do you see it? Like, have there been impacts on the actual practice of it that you notice? I mean, how many years have you been doing this? Has it changed demonstrably from when you started to where it is now?
That's a big question. I don't know if I can answer that. I know that I've been in private practice for 6 years. I've worked in mental health for, good Lord, probably like over 10 years for sure. The way I practice continues to change and evolve. One thing that I do notice is that as a trauma therapist, this is all like very intense work. But I think the thing that helped buffer that in person before the pandemic happened was so much of what my job is to attune to like what people's bodies are doing. Only like 10% of communication are the words that we speak. So, looking at what's not being said, noticing these little like expression changes, or noticing when people's body language goes like this, it becomes really difficult to assess that from just like the shoulders up. So it's beautiful to have that. It's possible to do without. I think having good rapport with clients and knowing really who they are, you have to, I think, have that to be able to catch those things virtually. But I think certainly the way I practice when I started even 6 years ago versus now, we have more tools certainly to facilitate online. One of the therapies, the interventions that I do is called EMDR, which involves eye movements.
I've heard about this.
Oh, it's a wild ride. It's so weird. I always preface it by being like, this is gonna be weird.
Can you tell us a bit about it?
Yeah, I'd love to. So eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy, which, full disclosure, I thought was total nonsense when I started. And I was a total jerk about it. I was like, okay, because essentially what we're saying is we go back to traumatic moments, and then we process those by doing these eye movements, which basically your eyes go back and forth like this. It's not hypnosis. A lot of people ask if it's hypnosis, and it's not. But in the simplest way I can explain it is if we imagine sort of like two sides of the brain, which is not really how the brain works, but for the sake of explanation here, we can talk about in traumatic moments how there's the story of what happened, so the events that happened, and then we have the emotions of what happened. And often in traumatic moments, we go into this like fight, flight, freeze response. And when we're in that response, we don't have access to all of the emotions. So in fight, flight, or freeze, we have access to like irritation, anger, numbing out, but we can't access all the other things. So when we go back with EMDR, we go back to what happened, and then, oh, great, that's a beautiful visualization. And then it's sort of like fast forward processing the emotion. And it's a wild time because people will be like angry and then crying and then laughing and then calm. And like, there's all kinds of wild things that happen in the body. And I was so skeptical until I went to the training begrudgingly. And I was like, this is a bunch of nonsense. It's now the gold standard treatment for trauma and a whole host of other things. Yeah. And we have to actually do the EMDR when we go to the training. And so it wasn't until like I had EMDR done to me and I was like quite smug. I was like, I know what this thing's about. I know exactly what it is, da, 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 da. And then I did it. And of course it was like totally something different. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
And I kind of hate that it works so well because it feels hokey, but there's tons of research behind it. But I feel unethical not doing it because it works so fast. People are processing things so quickly. People who have had like unprocessed trauma for decades. I've used this a lot with like ex-military people, with people who had, developmental childhood trauma, just like truly like horrifying experiences that have dictated how their life has gone, and then had it clear in like a matter of months.
Wow.
And they get their lives back. So I do it all the time. But I do warn people that like, it's unlike a lot of other therapies and it feels kind of strange. It's a wild ride.
Huh. Nick's watching now live on YouTube. He says that EMDR is working for his 2-year-old.
Yeah.
Like toddlers can receive the therapy?
Yeah. And the cool thing about, I don't work with children that young, but there are EMDR therapists who do. And there's different modalities because, someone who's 2 might not be able to follow. Like we use a light bar. I have a machine over here. I can move it over and show you later. But like we use a light bar, we use hand buzzies, but there's different ways to do what's called bilateral stimulation, which is essentially stimulating either side of the brain to help process. So for children, there's different ways to do it that looks a lot different than in adults. But the beautiful thing about kids is that, a 2-year-old doesn't have like this cemented sort of trauma that's dictating how they operate through the world for decades. So it often processes much quicker in children than it would in adults. So I'm happy to hear it. That's so great.
Wow. I'm trying to decide if I want to put you in this position. You're going to hate me.
That's okay.
Dr. Jordan Peterson's name has come up in the live chat. Sorry. What do you want me to do? And I have a registered psychologist right here live on the show. I'm curious for your take. Get into this as much as you like, or not at all.
Sure.
But Dr. Peterson, as you know, the College of Psychologists of Ontario has essentially told him that he needs to sort of take some social media retraining or he risks losing his license. And he's clapping back and making a big deal of it, as you would expect he would. And his legion of ardent followers, his disciples, are targeting the college. But the college has essentially said, like, sorry, like, we said what we meant what we said, and this is the deal. Your thoughts on the entire scenario and Dr. Jordan Peterson and whether or not he's fit to have a professional license? I mean, I think that people can have different personal opinions and convictions, and I don't think that all psychologists in Ontario or across Canada are on the same page about everything. Have you been paying attention to the story, and what do you make of it?
Oh, yes and no. It's so funny. My partner yesterday was like, you should talk about Jordan Peterson. And I was like, I'm not giving that man any more attention.
Your partner said you should talk about him on this show?
Yeah. He was like, you should like bring that up because that came up last week.
Okay,
and I was
well,
like,
good. Great.
But I was like, that man, it hurts my soul. I mean, here's what I'll say. I deliberately don't follow Jordan Peterson for many reasons. But in the context of what's going on with the college right now, that I know about, which really is a very surface understanding of what's going on with him, because I, again, try not to pay attention to him. So I think the criticism is from a lot of his followers that like, and probably from him, is that the college is like censoring him and this is like freedom of speech, blah, blah, blah. What people don't understand is that the college actually exists to protect the public. So that's something unique to the College of Psychologists in each province, is that they're actually not there to protect us as psychologists, which is what like the College of Physicians does, right? Like they tend to look out for like the physicians. College of Psychologists is there to protect the public. Because we are in positions of power, that there has to be accountability, that there are ethical codes, that we need to be held to a standard to be sure that we're not hurting people. And that includes how we speak publicly. So like Jordan Peterson is entitled to have whatever thoughts and feelings that he has. And just as I am, he needs to be held accountable to what he's saying publicly. Because there are like ethical considerations here that, for example, as I mentioned earlier, like I'm not walking around like diagnosing people because that's unethical and potentially harmful. I have to be really mindful, even though I use humor often, even though, you know, I talk about a wide range of things, even though I have opinions that maybe not every psychologist agrees to, I only am allowed to say those things publicly if they are like founded on research and there's evidence. I'm a professional. People's well-being and lives are put in our hands. So I have to really consider, like, how is what I'm saying potentially going to negatively impact people who might be vulnerable to this information? And that's something Jordan Peterson doesn't do. So it's so much less about freedom of speech. It's more about, like, he perpetuates incorrect and harmful personal opinions that he does not, like, dictate our personal opinions. We have a responsibility. If I'm going to say something personal that's not rooted in science, I have to be really clear about, like, this is a personal opinion, this is a professional opinion. And I have to be open that it's standard practice that if someone is causing harm, that they first receive training before they potentially lose their license and lose the privileges. This job comes with incredible privilege and incredible power, and it needs to be used responsibly. So I'm glad the college is doing that. I think that as Peterson does, he's doing quite a masterful job of twisting what's actually happening to victimize himself, to say, I'm being censored, I'm being whatever. And it's like, no, you're being held accountable for what your job entails. And if you don't want to be held accountable to the college, then give up your license and, like, come up with a different title for yourself. But Jordan Peterson is not somebody who is speaking ethically or behaving ethically online, and there should be accountability for that.
Yeah, I'm just.
Am I making everyone furious?
No, are you kidding? No, like I don't. I mean, well, you're probably making Peterson disciples furious, but I'm just like I'm scrolling through his Twitter profile to find something that I saw over the weekend that I just shook my head at, and it looks like he might have actually deleted it. But like it's really interesting to see him, like, now, you know, here he's tweeting about, like, socialist globalists, and he's talking about defunding the CBC, and he was taking a run at some prominent Canadian journalists who happen to be women. I don't think that's I mean, happen to be, I say that facetiously. It's just he's a very unique case when it comes to psychologists and how they typically behave or present themselves publicly, but he's also got, Ashley, as you know, like, millions of followers. I mean, I was making the argument, and it's not a strong argument, I acknowledge. It's actually kind of a stupid position to take on the show last week, because I was like, who even cares if he gets stripped of his professional credentials? Like, he's a millionaire so many times over. He's got this Patreon where people were giving him hundreds of thousands of dollars. He's got all these best-selling books. He does his speaking tours. Like, he doesn't need, like, he can just be Jordan Peterson, or he can, someone will, I'm sure that some, like, mail in, put the stamp on the paper, university somewhere will give him an honorary doctorate so he can keep being Dr. Jordan Peterson. But I don't think he needs his professional designation to maintain this audience that he has. And I did get some angry emails from big Peterson supporters that were talking about how, like, who would care? Are you kidding me? Who cares about the professional designation? Are you even listening to yourself? I acknowledge I was a little bit glib about it, but I do think it's safe to say that there's no other. I mean, if you want to call him Now you're going to puke in your mouth a little bit when I say this, but if you, I don't know if you want to call him a mental health professional, but that's what a psychologist is. And he is a psychologist, so I guess he's a mental health professional. But he sure is on an island with regards to his public conduct, the things that he said. Johnny, who does a great job producing this show, is just showing us some images of his comments about Elliot Page.
He's a quack,
the Canadian actor. He's
a quack.
But he's a quack with like an audience of millions.
Do your job. Don't tell people like, hey, you can beat depression by making your bed and cleaning your room. Like, he just, like, 12 rules for life. It's so simple, and he's a quack.
Well, Ashley, okay, so that's Johnny's opinion. Ashley, is there, and now I know you're gonna remind us that you just told us that you don't pay much attention to him on purpose, so maybe this question's unfair. But aside from maybe sort of, you can get a sense of what a guy like that is all about by how, his public comments, public commentary about him, and the reputation that he forges. But, like, have you seen examples of just, like, straight up bad advice? Like, can you think of one off the top of your head where you go, this is one example of why I got no time for this guy?
I mean, I think, like, the sexism and, like, the transphobia, like, I just think I can't even think of one thing with him. But what I will say is he's an excellent example of, like, there's different kinds of people that tend to be drawn to this profession in particular. So there's people like myself who I feel really strongly about mental health, and I really want to, I think people are fascinating, and I love like working with people. I think that's an honor to get to like work with people and hear their stories. So it's like very little about me. And as I think a good clinician, we have to constantly be asking ourselves, like, if I'm going to share something that is about myself, like, who is this for? The answer always needs to be, if it's in a session or if it's like publicly speaking, like it has to be like for other people. Our goal is to also, part of our ethical code is to also educate like the public. So that's one kind of person. I think Jordan Peterson is an excellent example of someone who has like big narcissistic traits, who probably sought out this profession because he wants to be treated like some kind of guru, right? Because if I think about where his comments tend to come from, he actually like does the opposite of what I just described, which is I think he actively causes harm to people. When he says things, he likes to embolden people who might, for several unrelated reasons, feel disenfranchised, feel alone, which I think is why he's so successful. He's managed to monopolize, a subset of like young men who are feeling lost and, isolated and disenfranchised in different ways, which is fair. But then the way that he deals with that is by attacking other, arguably more marginalized groups of people. And it's a lot of like hate, and it's a lot of criticism, and I think it's harmful. So he's publicly saying things like that are transphobic, that are sexist, that are wrong and hurtful. So he's someone who's very dangerous, and he's not the only one. There's tons of people in this profession who simply want to be like the expert because they want to feel important. They want it to be about them. They want to feel worshipped by like their followers. But we shouldn't be conflating that with what actual therapy is and what actual mental health care looks like. That's like some weird guru nonsense that's rampant and I think on the rise. That's not therapy. That's not care. That's not healthcare.
You can follow Ashley Wanamaker on TikTok and on Instagram at Ashley Wanamaker, and you can find her online at ashleywanamaker.com. You can learn more about what she does, her collective, along with her colleagues at beinghumanclub.com. It's so good to we kept you longer, and I'm looking at the clock and I'm realizing you probably have a session starting in 6 minutes, so we're going to let you go. But Happy New Year. Thanks for doing this, and we'll look forward to the next time our paths cross.
My pleasure. Thanks so much, Ryan.
You got it. That's registered psychologist Ashley Wanamaker. You can let us know how this resonated with you.
Love her.
She's
great.
So she's matter of fact. Yeah. She's smart. She's intuitive. She's a great storyteller.
And that was the thing. I think people think like I'm mad at Jordan Peterson because I get so like fired up. She handled it calmly.
Yeah.
But like he overcomplicates everything. She's so right. He just wants to be important rather than helping people, which should be first and foremost.
Yeah, but you know what, man? And I will say this is that you can find hundreds of thousands or millions of people that will tell you that he does or did help them.
Of course.
And that's the thing. Like that's the thing that you can't deny. I'm not saying that just because somebody has a big audience that their opinions are valid. Like Kanye has a huge audience.
Sure.
Right? So I'm not saying that numbers equate professional credibility or helpfulness or anything like that. But you cannot deny the fact that Peterson's message resonates with millions of people.
Sure, and he's helped people with depression and different things. But did attacking Elliot Page help people with depression?
I mean, that was
and
just
anxiety.
bullshit.
Did attacking plus size models do anything to get people out of their homes?
That was the
and
SI
be better
swimsuit
people?
edition,
Yeah,
right?
Like that kind of stuff. Do your job.
Yeah.
Just do your job.
Yeah. You can let us know what you think. Talk at ryanjesperson.com. Where was this comment I wanted to read from M. Aitken? She said basically, Peterson I can't find the comment, but basically said he's the same as the people that travel the country selling bottles of like Miracle Potion or Miracle Cure. You know, he's like the traveling medicine shows
This
from back in the
bottle of
day.
snake oil.
Snake oil, like literally.
Tip top in a minute.
Yeah, I was reading actually just the other day. I have this book as I'm doing my purge, as I'm doing my my minimalism thing, and I have this really neat book called Why Do We Say It? And it's just a cool hardcover book, and it's you go through like the root of our language and our idioms and our expressions.
Sure.
And then the snake oil salesman was a really interesting one. Ambustion says Peterson's a grifter. Tracy says it sounds like a cult. And a lot of people find cults helpful at first as well.
Mm-hmm. Like, I'm not saying he doesn't help people. I'm just saying he's such a quiet, everything you're saying we've heard before. You're not saying it for the first time. You don't need to put it in a book for anyone. It's just.
That conversation was presented by the amazing team over at Park Power, your friendly local utilities provider. And there's a new promo code for 2023, and this is great. This is an opportunity to kind of double down. You remember you used to save $70 off your first bill? You can save $150 now. It's a bundling incentive. You go to parkpower.ca, super easy to do, and when you sign up, maybe you're looking at natural gas, maybe you're looking at electricity, maybe you're looking at internet. It's best, quite frankly, for your bottom line if you're looking at all three. If you bundle internet, electricity, and natural gas using the promo code RealTalk23, that's RealTalk23 at parkpower.ca, you're going to save $150 off your first bill. That's $50 for the electricity, $50 for the natural gas, and $50 for internet. And of course, when you sign up with Park Power, you're never locked in. So if you find somewhere where you're going to pay less, and spoiler alert, you're not gonna, but if you do, or for whatever reason, you're moving, you got to go, there's a new circumstance in your life, you will never be penalized. You can always walk away from your agreement with Park Power. We're really proud to partner with them. Again, the promo code RealTalk23. Every Monday, we look forward to this. We know that the world can get heavy. And we know that there are things that can frustrate us, or outrage, quite frankly, becomes, the soup du jour, if you will. It looks like everybody's peddling something that can raise our ire, hitting that anger button like we talked about last week. And then along comes Positive Reflections, presented by our friends at Kuby Energy. These are the silver linings. These are the stories of random acts of kindness and paying it forward. And sometimes they're submitted by real talkers like you to our email. Sometimes you tag us on Twitter with something that resonated. And that was the case this morning. And I'm so grateful that Landy did. She sent me this. This is just from last night. Did you watch the Critics' Choice Awards on CW? I got to be honest, I have not seen Brendan Fraser's movie The Whale. But Brendan Fraser, the actor, you remember him from the Mummy franchise and all that, and then he had a lot of stuff happen in his personal life, in his professional life. And if you don't know the background, you can go read up on it. But Brendan Fraser is back. And boy, oh boy, from the mountaintop last night as he accepted his Critics' Choice Award as broadcast on CW, here's a portion of what he had to say.
I was in the wilderness, and I probably should have left a trail of breadcrumbs, but you found me, and like all the best directors, you merely just showed me where to go to get to where I needed to be. If you, like a guy like Charlie, who I played in this movie, in any way struggle with obesity, or you just feel like you're in a dark sea, I want you to know that if you too can have the strength to just get to your feet and go to the light, good things will happen.
And a standing ovation.
Good night.
For Critics' Choice Award winner Brendan Fraser. How great is that? If you can just get to your feet and go to the light, good things will happen. We hope that you found some light on this morning's episode of Real Talk. If it resonated with you, smash that like button, share it with your friends, subscribe to our channel on YouTube and our podcast. It means so much to us when you rate and review the shows that we're doing. It's such an honor to join you every single day with conversations that matter. They'll continue tomorrow and through the rest of this week, including on Wednesday, where Dr. Sylvain Charlebois will join us, the food professor. We're going to talk about what's driving the rising cost of groceries in Canada. As mentioned, we'll talk about the opioid crisis coming up on Thursday. And, of course, everything else that's happening around the world. We've got eyes on it. If you have feedback you'd like to share with us, you know where to find us. talk@ryanjesperson.com. Make it a great Monday, friends, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dwivedi, Ahmed Ali, Brandy Morin, Ann Castleman, Ori Hogan, Harman Kandola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjesperson.com.